Alrighty. I was wrong about Kari Lake winning in Arizona. I will admit that. I think that I was a little biased because her campaign and Blake Masters, although it was a little more obvious Blake Masters wasn't going to win, especially as we got more votes tallied, and his deficit with Mark Kelly did not close at all. But I very purposefully evoked the image of Obama in 2008 with that poster that said hope. Maybe some of you aren't old enough to remember, but I certainly remember. I tried to copy that a little bit in my own style, with Kari Lake yesterday. And I was doing that, somewhat tongue-in-cheek. That, yes, if there was anything good to come out of this election, it was that she was the great hope for the American right. Because I thought that certainly if she got in there, she would be the one governor in the country other than DeSantis that we could count on to reform our politics. But it became clear last night, even though it's been very tight the whole time, been very tight for days, the gap between Kari Lake and Katie Hobbs. Katie Hobbs with a very slight lead of like 25,000 votes currently. There's going to be another drop tonight in about 3.5 hours from the time I'm recording this. I'm not going to wait that long to put this up. If I'm going to make a prediction based on last night, Kari Lake, I try and follow people who, I try and find in any situation like this, people who I think know what they're talking about and who have something interesting to say and actually provide useful analysis. One of the people I found who was very reliable, who I found before the 2020 election, was Richard Barris. And Barris put out yesterday on Locals his target for Lake, as speaking objectively, as a data analyst and as a pollster and all these things. And he's not some GOP hater guy. He did an exit poll paid for by the GOP. Although in other cases, he is certainly anti-GOP. But he's someone of the right. He's a good guy, in other words. He supports the right people on the right, and not the Republican Party itself. So Barris, I think, is a pretty objective guy when it comes to this stuff. And he said Lake needed to hit 60% in last night's drop. She didn't come close. She was at 54%. There's no way to spin that as a win for Kari Lake. She's underperforming where the people who I trust, say she needs to be to win. And so last night was supposed to be the first big favorable drop for Kari Lake that was going to start closing this gap between her and Katie Hobbs. Because there's only so many votes left to count. I think at this point maybe 197,000, somewhere around there. And you'll say, well, 197, there's only a 25,000 vote gap. Well, yeah, but I mean, if Kari Lake is not winning these drops, if she's not netting thousands of votes out of each one of these drops, then she's not closing that gap. Now, originally this drop yesterday was supposed to be 80,000 votes, and it ended up being 97,000 votes. So some people are wondering, well, maybe because they were originally estimating, hey, this 80,000 vote drop should be pretty favorable for Kari Lake. Well, maybe it was, and they added 17,000 unfavorable votes. You can choose to believe that if you want, but that 17,000 votes still came out of the ones that were remaining to be counted. And so she's got to win nearly 60% of all the votes remaining to be counted in order to close this gap. That's just to break even. So she's not going to have a lead of like a point or two. That would be if she just ties it up. And so as Arizona Secretary of State and gubernatorial candidate Katie Hobbs said yesterday in a statement, she is the unequivocal favorite, I think is what she called herself, to win the election at this point after last night's drop. Now, it's strange that she's not declaring victory and that the media has not called the race for Katie Hobbs. I do think it's odd. Maybe they know something we don't. We all talk about how back in 2020, the Fox News called Arizona for Joe Biden within like 2 hours of the polls closing or something. But nobody's calling the race for Katie Hobbs. I mean, that is a little suspicious, but, hey, could always be a head fake. Could be that they're trying to get people's hopes up about Kari Lake so then they can then come and crash them. Keep her even there just for a little bit. But again, how much calculation really goes into all this, into the exact ways in which the ballots are reported. I mean, I certainly do think there's a bit of theater to this when they just dropping these little tiny bites, at 8 p.m. 8 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. Mountain time. At the end of the day, if she doesn't pull this out, which it almost certainly looks like she won't, I think that Arizona is a state that should be abandoned and people should not be putting time or energy into, because if you can't win with the greatest candidate of our generation in what should have been a very favorable, historically speaking, very favorable year to the GOP, you're not going to win there at all. You're not going to win there in a bad year for Republicans, certainly, and you're not going to win with a mediocre candidate. And without, excuse me, I'm still coughing. Without Lake in the governor's mansion in Arizona, you're not passing any laws to reform a very backward and just embarrassing electoral system. You're not going to have precincts that people can go and vote at in person. You're not going to get rid of ballot harvesting. As it stands, the electoral system, the modes of voting, are extremely favorable towards Democratic voters, makes it very easy for Democratic voters to vote, and it makes it very difficult for Republican voters to vote. That's simply the case. Republicans like to vote in person, so they closed most of the voting precincts, and they made it so you have to drive, sometimes 30 to 45 minutes just to get to a polling place. And then once you get there, there's a 3-hour line. And when you get to the front of the line, then, the printer's out of toner because they don't print the ballots ahead of time, I guess probably for the sake of climate change or some nonsense. And then they feed the ballot in the machine and it doesn't work, and they say, oh, okay, we'll just put this in box 3, we'll count it later, and then those ballots never get counted. They get thrown in the counted pile, and then they go, oops, I guess we'll just, if you really want those to be counted, we'll have to do a full recount, but it's not close enough, so we're not going to do a full recount. That's what I'm seeing here. And also, when it comes to ballot harvesting, that's not something that Republicans can copy. It's not something that the right can engage in and compete with the Dems on, because Dem voters are densely concentrated in small areas. Democrat operatives can go door knocking in an apartment complex, collect 500 ballots, in a couple hours, and run them all into a drop box. And people don't even have to fill out the ballots. Once you got the ballot, you can fill it out yourself as the harvester and dump it in the drop box. I think as long as the voter has signed it away, you can write whatever you want on there. Now, is this legal? No, but it's effective. And it's something that Republicans can't replicate. You're not going to go door to door in a rural area trying to collect ballots. It would take you 5 hours to get 30 of them. And that's if people even answer their door. That's if people, aren't working, or if, they don't, tell you, hey, no trespassing, get off my land. And the same thing's true in suburbs. It's also going to be very difficult. Maybe you'd have some success, maybe you wouldn't. But at the end of the day, the cost of harvesting each ballot is going to be much, much higher for Republicans, comparable to Democrats. And so the only chance that the right has of succeeding in modern America is by taking back control of the electoral system and restoring a more traditional mode, of elections. Because if you control the election system, you control the politics of whatever polity you're talking about, whether it's a county, a state, or a union. So if Kari Lake is not able to overcome this hurdle this one time, nobody, I don't think anybody ever will again in Arizona, because you've got to get in there and change the laws in order to be competitive. If those laws were different, hey, maybe Blake Masters would have won this time. So Arizona might just need to be added to the list of states that are not worth dealing with at this point. And in that case, there is, I see no path for a Republican to win in 2024, so give up on the presidency. Not that it does you any good. Really no good in controlling the presidency of the United States. The White House does nothing good. The White House only does bad things. You can hope that maybe if you elect a Republican president that they will do less bad things than a theoretical Democrat alternative, but they're not going to do anything good for you. Now, if by some miracle the trends that we've been seeing, the very weak trends in these ballot drops that we've been seeing, let's say that they're understating actually Kari Lake's remaining support amongst the ballots that have yet to be counted, well, then maybe she could pull it off, and in which case I will be very happy, and I will gladly say that I was wrong now. But, I'm trying to call balls and strikes as I see them. I'm not going to dig myself in on one side of, one issue and say, you know what, no, this is right 100%, and hold out, till the end and hope that I was right. I'm going to change my position as the facts on the ground change. And as of right now, Lake looks like a certified loser. And that you can say that it's unfair all you want. I would agree with you to a certain extent. I come from like the ANCAP side. I don't think elections are legitimate to begin with, no matter who wins. They're, to me, merely a means to an end. And, if you, at the end of the day, if you get your person in office, however you did it is however you did it. You still won. You're the winner. There are no moral victories at this point in the country. You either win or you lose. And right now, looks like Lake and Arizona are going to lose big. So with that said, I will see you folks back here tomorrow. I'll probably talk about something different, unless there's a big upset for Lake tonight, and she does particularly well. If she gets like over 60% or something in tonight's drop, which is possible. Again, we don't know what the results are until they come in. It is possible that the rest of the results are favorable enough to Lake that she is able to overcome her deficit. But if the trend from the last couple days continues, she's not gonna. It's simple as that. So with that said, we'll see you folks back here tomorrow.